Welcome to the Advanced Faltering Guide for Doom the Dark Ages. Falter states are stun states where the enemy can't do anything for a moment, giving you a window to do whatever you want. Here we will be covering melee strikes during falter states, barrel falters, jump falters, armor break falters, Impaler ghost falters, Impaler Fling falters, Delimb Falters, plasma gun falters, Daze Falters, Pincushion Falters, and plasma shield toss falters. Yes, I finally found a use for the 100 random video clips I've captured over the past 3 months. And if a falter that you use is not included in the list, it's not because I don't value it, it's because there's just so much and people play different ways. You can spot a falter by the yellow circle around enemies' heads, or if you turn off the indicators you can see them stumble. Falters set up enemies for combo damage and cancel their attack animation, though some projectile attacks will still come out if the falter happens really close to their launch. And continuous projectile streams like the Mancubus flamethrower will not be cancelled by a falter. Falter states are not affected by the damage done to demons, so you can raise or lower this value in the difficulty settings and the falters will remain consistent. Some falters come from obvious sources like a barrel explosion or a big melee hit, but others come from some of the most bizarre ideas you can imagine, like how the Impaler can actually launch fodder demons into heavy demons and the impact will falter them. You can see here that I'm repeatedly faltering a cyber demon by just chucking little dudes at him. It's not entirely useful in that situation, but watch as I falter him by launching a fodder demon from mid-range, and then close the space for the approach. This Impaler Fling will also insta-kill chain gunners, how about that? Anyway, we need to note that there are different falter states with different durations of stun. I will try my best to simplify my findings. We'll start by saying we have light and heavy falters. Each falter state rewards the player with an amount of time to attack safely. I'm measuring this time in terms of gauntlet swings, which is the fastest melee option. Light falters give you enough time to do 2 melee attacks safely. Falter, attack twice, guard. That's guaranteed. Many things will cause falters, including basic options in your toolkit. The Shield Bash will falter Imps, Hell Knights, Arachnotrons, Whiplashes, and Revenants, leading to easy combo openings in the falter window, especially if you toss the shield after. This is the Shield Toss Recall Falter, which is a light falter. Against a Hell Knight, we get 2 hits. Against a Whiplash, we get 2 hits. In both cases, we could get 3 hits because of the slow windup of their next attack. That third hit falters, so they get interrupted. But with the same setup on a Mancubus, he goes into a fast ground pound and can actually hit you in the recovery frames of the second melee if you don't get your timing right. The window is pretty strict. If you're using the flail, you'll definitely get hit because of the longer animation. In most cases, you can actually get the same number of flails as you can gauntlets, but against the Mancubus, it's pretty dangerous. If you throw out the shield and recall it from a distance, any demon in the recall path will falter. This is a very powerful strategy that I suspect may be nerfed someday, but for now it's very useful. The window is so tight against a Mancubus or a Pinky that I suggest only doing 1 melee attack if you're going to melee, unless you're absolutely sure that you're getting in immediately after the falter initiates. It's probably best to play it safe. Again, this is for light falters, we'll get to heavies in a bit. And of course you don't have to melee during a falter state, we're just using it as a measurement device. Here's another light falter, Armor Break. If you break the armor of an armored Arachnotron, Hell Knight, or Pinky, you're clear to land 2 hits, probably 3. The Armor Break falter can be caused by either a gun, melee, shield toss, explosion, whatever. Though you need to know that breaking armor with a super shotgun does not falter ever. Actually, neither shotgun class falters on Armor Break, and I just found out that neither class of the Skull Crusher falters on Armor Break. So we're starting to see exceptions to the rules. And our second category is heavy falters, which allow for 3 hits in all cases. Let's look at the Plasma Soldier Explosion Falter. This is a heavy falter. Plasma Explosion on a Hell Knight, you get 3 hits, easy. Plasma Explosion on a Mancubus, 3 hits. Even a big boy like a Cosmic Baron is heavy faltered, he takes 3 hits. But there's one exception, a weird one, and it's that the very gay doesn't falter at all from a plasma explosion. I don't know why, he just doesn't. The most common heavy falter, of course, is the Parry Falter, where you probably already know you can get a full 3-swing melee series, gauntlet or flail, with the final hit faltering, so it's totally safe. Most parries will falter a demon, though some demons will throw out multiple attacks that do not falter on parry, until you hit the right one after a series of parries. In these falter states, you can safely perform a 3-hit melee string or a single dread mace swing, with no risk of being interrupted by the enemy. Or simply do 1 or 2 strikes into a gun or a shield bash, whatever you want to do. Now, melee attacks. Melee strike with the gauntlet and flail will falter imps but will not falter anything larger. Don't go in swinging against big demons. You need to falter them with something else first to create an opening. However, the third hit of your melee series is a heavy enough hit to cause a falter even on the biggest enemies in the game. You can empty out the full series and hit the falter at the end, or strategically place your hits on one or multiple enemies, saving the final hit for a falter on the right target. You have to be careful not to get hit by the enemy you're attacking while performing a melee series. If you're hit, the melee series will reset back to 1, meaning you will miss out on the faltering hit, which is hit number 3. You can see here that my melee series resets back to the punch when I get hit, while I was expecting the kick to come out. And you don't want to lose that kick because it does massive damage. Kick falters and third strike flail falters do not work on battle knights while they still have their armor. You have to break it first for these particular falters to work. However, this is not a rule of armored enemies in general, because these melee falters do work on armored mancubi and armored pinkies. Go figure, there's no logic to it. And if the game is someday updated to have more falter consistency, I will list the changes in the pinned comment below, so be sure to check that. This section of the video I'm gonna call, What? Parryable projectiles result in heavy falter states, but register differently on different demons. A single parried projectile on a whiplash will falter, but a mancubus requires 2 projectile parries to occur in a short window for the falter to happen. If you wait too long between parries, the second projectile will not falter. This applies to both regular armored mancubi and leader/enforcer armored mancubi, same parry rules. So that might lead you to think that leaders don't have different parry rules. Well, you'd be wrong, because a pinky, armored or not, will falter from a single projectile parry, but a leader pinky requires 3 projectile parries in a short window to falter. If you wait too long, it resets and you have to start over. So don't go rushing in for a melee series just because you parried him once, you'll get bit. A cyber demon works differently. He will falter after 2 quick parries. But if you wait between them, it doesn't actually reset. The second parry won't falter since you waited, but he's actually programmed to falter no matter what on the third parry. So I can parry him once, run around, parry him again, run around, come back a minute later, and the next parry is guaranteed to falter. The same rule applies to the leader cyber demon, but +1. Now you have to parry 3 times to falter, and he's programmed to falter no matter what on the 4th parry. And it just keeps getting crazier. Agadon hunters will falter from a single parry on either their overhead smash, their charging attack, or their shield swipe. Faltering from their horizontal swipes requires you to parry 2 in a row quickly. And against a leader Agadon hunter, parrying those heavy attacks will not result in a falter right away. You actually have to parry 2 things in a row, light or heavy attacks, to trigger a falter. And if you wait too long between them, the counter resets, unlike the cyber demon where you can wait all day. Keeping the 2 count in mind, this is how you know to do something like this. Single punch on the approach, parry, punch kick for the falter, and now you know that attack number 2 is programmed to falter on parry, so you're prepared to shield bash in during the stun window and hit him with another melee series or super shotgun. Cosmic Barons will falter from 3 parried melee swipes in a short window, but they don't have to be consecutive. They will falter from their jumping slam dunk and the heavy orb that shoots out in the center. They will not falter from the randomized pattern projectiles, unless of course you have ground fissure equipped. Variegaze will falter from the third projectile parry in a short window, and will falter from their wind-up slash. And then there's the Komodo, who's really weird. The Komodo Champion or Komodo Leader will falter from 4 parries done in a short window. But the regular Komodo, he's a strange one. It doesn't matter how many parries you get, he will never falter outside of the smash attack, the tail swipe, and the heavy swipe. You don't have to parry anything else, just parry those attacks and he'll falter. If you parry 5, 6, 7 regular swipes and stabs in a row, it means nothing to him. It has to be the smash, the tail swipe, or the heavy swipe. Otherwise, no falter for you. You're probably unaware of the existence of the heavy swipe because it looks very similar to the regular double swipe. Here they are back to back. Yeah, they look the same, just one happens twice. But the first one will falter on parry and the other one won't. They are not the same. They both wind up and swipe from the left and they have the same timing, but look at his posture. The heavy swipe that falters on parry is on the left, and he's much lower to the ground. The regular double swipe has him arcing upwards on his hind legs. Very hard to spot in the moment. So just keep in mind, regular Komodos will always falter from these 3 specific parries, and the leader/champion Komodos will falter after 4 consecutive parries. Next up is explosive barrels. Barrels are fairly obvious. They're a staple of FPS games since the original Doom, and the Dark Ages is the first Doom in a long time to emphasize their importance. There are far more barrels placed throughout the levels, and they're almost always in strategic locations. Except the barrels in Siege 1 next to the tentacles. I assume they're here to screw us over. Thanks, Hugo. You're really looking out for us. Barrels will falter enemies and do huge damage. It's common to see barrels placed next to the spawn points of cyberdemons. Sentinel Command has 2 cyberdemons vulnerable to barrels. The first being after you hit the switch that opens the door that lets the pinky in. You can actually kick additional barrels into this space before hitting the switch. So when you start the fight, lob explosives to the end and detonate all the barrels, making easy work of both enemies. The second cyberdemon is in the final arena fight with a barrel set to his left. There's a leader cyberdemon in one of the hell levels that's surrounded by shield guys, and right there's a barrel. Barrels next to a Mancubus will blow both of his arms off, leaving him with no way to attack, and they can break armor instantly, so be ready to spot those opportunities. Since we just mentioned delimbing the Mancubus, that's also a very useful falter strategy using the super shotgun, and at times the combat shotgun. One shot of the SSG will tear off a Mancubus arm, resulting in a falter, but you need to make sure to not do it too close to a falter that already happened before. Multiple faltering attacks in a short window will not re-falter. You gotta give it a little bit of time. Approaching him this way allows you to get in close without using the shield toss. It is my go-to way to take him out. In early levels, 3 combat shotgun blasts will delimb, though it's a bit awkward to engage him this way. What you'll want to do is start off with a quick shield toss, target the arm, recall the shield toss for the falter, and then in 2 more shots you'll re-falter with the delimb. Super shotgun on a Hell Knight will also tear off one of his arms, faltering him, setting him up for a free melee strike, which then puts him into daze. These 2 delimb falters against the Mancubus and Hell Knight are useful for the entire game. The Imp Delimb Falter, however, less so, though it can come in handy in the opening levels. 3 combat shotgun blasts will take his arm off, and that's just the right amount of time for them to wind up an attack and have it interrupted. But the real way to go is to shield bash in for the first falter, which does just enough damage to allow 2 shots to trigger the delimb, effective and very fun. Body shots and arm shots do the same amount of damage, so there's really no reason not to be going for the Delimb Falter. You'd be surprised how often it can save you. One of the most underrated falters in the game is the Daze Falter, performed by tossing the shield at a dazed enemy. This causes a shockwave that falters anyone nearby. It's good habit to toss the shield at any dazed enemy right before executing them, because everyone will be faltered during the animation. Here's a series of clips showing cool moments of Daze Falters. Another massively underrated falter is the Jump Falter. Doomguy is heavy this time around, and an elevated jump will falter anyone in a wide radius. A Jump Falter will even put a Ghosted Revenant on the ground. The reason this powerful falter is so underrated and underused is that it's largely an unintentional falter. Players aren't looking for opportunities to jump from high up just to get a falter. The game's action is too fast for that. But what usually happens is that a player makes a jump in the moment that just happens to be high enough to cause a jump falter. This takes some serious awareness of the moment, but when you've played the game enough, you start to recognize when the jump you've just made is about to cause a falter, and then you can mentally prepare for what comes next. Taking advantage of incidental jump falters is a wonderful detail to add to your gameplay. However, you must keep in mind that jump falters are not strong enough to affect super heavy demons, unless they come from very high up like jumping off a cliff. I also want to give a shout out to Sleepy Killer on Twitter for tagging me with a really cool grenade launcher strategy for pulling off an intentional jump falter. You can shoot a grenade at an enemy, jump, and block down to avoid the damage, and the blast propels you high enough to get the jump falter at the end. Very cool strategy. How about we toss in a really bizarre falter? I'm sure the term Impaler Ghost Falter grabbed your attention earlier, so what is that? Well, there's something about the Impaler shot. This spike that comes out has an aura around it that can cause a falter by just passing by enemies, but it only applies to fodder demons. I haven't really figured it out because I don't always get it and I don't use the Impaler that much these days. But it does happen quite frequently, and if you use the Impaler, maybe you can make some use of this. Theoretically, you could use this falter to get a safe melee approach on a zombie soldier. Now that we're talking about guns and how they cause falters, let's take a look at the big dogs, the Plasma class and Pincushion. The Pincushion mod of the Shredder is a stunningly powerful weapon in the early game, and that's not saying it's no good later on. It does heavy damage to the enemy that explodes and falters anyone around them. It does not falter the targeted enemy, so don't expect a pin-cushioned cyberdemon to falter from the blast. You may be too far to take advantage of the falter with melee, but this falter is also highly damaging because of the pincushion explosion. Even the unupgraded pincushion explosion will put a nearby Hell Knight into Daze for an execution. Watch here as I apply Pincushion to a Pinky, toss the shield during his Daze state for a Daze Falter, perform a Glory Strike, and then after the animation I toss the shield to trigger Pincushion and falter everyone around again. The Very Gay is also immune to this falter like he is to the Plasma Explosion. The plasma guns will explode plasma shields as you learn early on, and while this largely gets replaced by the upgraded shield toss, if your playstyle centers around a lot of plasma use, targeting plasma soldiers can lead to clean focused falters that preserve additional plasma soldiers that are nearby, while also saving that precious shield toss cooldown. If you don't upgrade the shield right away, shield exploding in level 2 is a handy strategy against certain enemies on the board. But the shield toss upgrade is really where the magic is. As the shield bounces around from a plasma soldier, it falters multiple times and does massive damage. Watch here as a shield toss puts an Arachnotron into Daze. Watch a shield toss instantly heat up a Mancubus's armor. Watch a shield toss take a Revenant out of his invincible state. A very important part of using plasma soldiers this way is knowing when to manually recall the shield, as to not expend additional shield guys on the board. This allows you to set up multiple high-damaging falters against leaders and super heavies. When you see a plasma soldier, don't instinctively throw your shield at it. Save him, come back to him later, and use him to your highest advantage. This is one of the most powerful strategies in the game. It requires fast recognition of the changes occurring in the action, and a good amount of memorization for where plasma soldiers appear. You'll start to see that there are many cases where a single plasma soldier is placed in a strategic location to be used against a deadly enemy. While we're on Plasma, the Accelerator's Heat Blast upgrade is quite straightforward in its faltering ability. Hold fire on the target and release when you want the blast. It falters the targeted enemy and those nearby, but it does not falter super heavies, sadly. The real magic comes from the Cycler. If you use this weapon, you know what I'm talking about. The upgraded Arc Lightning transfers to 2 enemies once someone in shock dies, and the transference causes a falter. The power of this ability is comically strong, shocking and faltering super heavies and leaders over and over. They just can't do anything. Even a Cosmic Baron will be faltered out of his aerial smash. Here is a long series of Cycler falters that I find very entertaining and I've wanted to share for months. That about does it for my advanced guide to faltering. I didn't cover absolutely everything, it's just what I've been digging into these months. Before I go, I should mention that there are occasional moments when falters aren't working. I have kicked a Cyber Demon, which should be a guaranteed falter, and he didn't react. But I'm wondering if that's not a failure of the faltering system and instead an issue of enemies randomly ignoring a hit entirely. You can see here that I kicked a zombie and he didn't react at all. He shouldn't have faltered, he should have exploded, and just nothing happened. There's also an issue that's existed in all the new Doom games where once enemies enter certain animations, they are totally locked in no matter what you do. Watch here, I'm gonna target the Mancubus arm with the SSG. It should Delimb Falter him, but because he's entered the animation of jumping off the ledge, the damage doesn't register until he lands, and then his arm flies off a second after I shot it. And here you can see I did an armor break falter on a Battle Knight, but because of this specific charging up animation, the falter doesn't actually work, even though you can see the yellow ring. Yeah, there are some funky moments. I don't have time to research all 11 falters and what animations are locked and might not be faltered. You just gotta know there's gonna be some bullshit every once in a while. I expect some of these faltering issues to be ironed out like they were with Eternal eventually, or at least I hope so. But even with the minor inconsistencies, falters are a huge part of Doom the Dark Ages. Take this information into the game and see how it can add to your playstyle. There are so many ways to falter in this game, and when you master it, you're playing on another level. Thanks for watching.